Yeah.
My lightsaber was just spontaneously ignited. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Happens to everyone.
That happens sometimes. Yeah, but
You're so young.
For that.
Exactly. Sometimes it ignites too early.
Yeah.
Okay. I was considering about
Got my team's dildo.
Yeah. I got a bunch of those. I've been giving them away. People are usually very laughing when they see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello. Welcome to Blaming the End User, Season 2, Episode 5. So we can
This is a swag fight.
Yes, it's about...
This is the later one, newer one. You're still on the old version, okay.
Oh, no.
Sorry, Jussi, you can start again.
Oh, no, it's fine. So...
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So, some fun in the beginning. So yeah, everyone can guess this episode is about teams and teams adoption. So therefore we have one of the team's experts or superheroes here.
Oh, thank you. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Right.
Hello.
Yeah, so how are things? Vesku,
Yeah,
I heard that you changed your workplace.
Yes, I changed my employer, and I'm working for Sulava now. I used to work for Innofactor for over 7 years, and so I decided to take up on the new challenges that were, or the opportunity doors and pathways, whatever is out there, to seek out new life and new knowledge, and see where that path takes me. So that's why I kind of took the. When the opportunity opened up, so I kind of wanted to go on and see what's out there.
Yeah, it's really the company where everybody's going. So it feels like it's the new cool kid in town in Finland.
Yeah, are you joining?
No. But for example, Martin Ekels in the Netherlands is doing the same thing. So they've got their Portiva club, and they're buying up all kinds of other companies, and they're now the hot major thing to be in right now.
Yeah, so. I mean, in Finland it's like Sulava and Sininen Meteoriitti with Valo. So these are kind of the high runners, as we say.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, congrats on the move. So I guess you are focusing still on teams and teams consulting in Sulava, right?
Yes, of course. Yes, architecting, visioning about what's out there and what can you do with teams around it. So basically everything teams related.
Cool.
And I'm still going to be speaking in events as well. So I'm here to stay.
Yeah. What are your next events? Where are you going to?
My next event, the next one is actually next week. My webinar. It's about what's new in Teams and the latest features and roadmaps, and it's going to be in English this time. So you can, even Marijn can join up, or you could have joined up before, but it would have some difficulties because the automatic translation is not coping with Finnish.
No?
but
that's because your words are so long. That's the problem.
Yeah. I
know.
That's
the single reason, exactly.
Yes. Exactly, and the next event, confirmed event after that, it's a Scottish Summit.
Cool! I'll
last
see you
day
there.
of February. Yeah, we'll be seeing there, and so it's in Glasgow. So it's going to be fun visiting Scotland.
Scottish Summit to go work, right?
Oh yes, of
course. No, to be I was in Glasgow in June, and the Auchentoshan distillery is like 10 minutes drive. So
Okay.
we'll definitely go there.
Yeah.
So, here we go again. Whiskey discussion.
Yeah. Glengoyne. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
cool.
All right.
Teams.
Let's talk a little bit about Teams adoption. So let's talk a little bit about how we can drive Teams adoption in the organization. So what are the do's and the don'ts? So if you talk a little bit about your experiences. So yeah.
Okay, it might be easier to start with some don'ts. Yeah, the common stuff that's happening. Well, both are in a way easy, but don'ts are usually where people are hitting on the ball first, and since they will be listening only at the start of the Teams cast anyway, that it's better to get don't do these parts in the beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, basically, I think one of the big things is that people are assuming that you have the generic best practices. Hey, you are coming in as a Teams consultant. Can you hand us over the what's the best practice on this? Hey, I don't know much about you. I don't know how does the people work in your company? What do they do? What are the challenges? No. Just give us a kind of best practices how we should do things. Okay, that's kind of one thing. You generalize too much.
Yeah.
So you kind of or having one training or one kind of training that's going to fit them all.
Training to rule them all.
Yeah, one way. Yeah, exactly. And you do that, and the worst case is maybe you do it once and you record it, and you assume that everybody's watching the recording.
Assumption.
And the company can have lots of people working in there, so it's kind of a thing that's kind of going to cause trouble later because they don't really get how they should be using Teams in their work. So that's the one thing. Of course, you can have the feature-related training, and it has nothing to do with your work, but it doesn't have anything to do with your benefits either. It's just okay. I'm trying to switch to work with Teams. I don't necessarily get why, but you kind of skip those important parts. I saw some of your earlier episodes, so you know about this.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, I know. I'm still trying to recover. But
you're part of the show.
Oh yeah. That's the thing. But the thing is that yes, you need to know the audience. You need to know what they do, why they are doing it, what are the pain points or challenges at this point. This is all very generic as well. When I'm talking about these pain points, challenges, stuff, people can come back to me and say, hey, I've heard that. Of course, because that's the kind of key thing here. You need to know the audience, otherwise you're going to hit the wall.
Yeah, and don't assume, because we know assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups.
Oh yeah.
Then if you assume, you make an ass of you and me. As you, me.
First
yeah.
time I heard this one.
Oh really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
I need to remember it.
Oh yeah, but that's true. It's kind of we're assuming things. They are assuming things. Kind of thinking, okay, this is yet another tool. You just add it. You just teach people how to click some buttons. But this is something more. This is about the culture. This is about how do they do the work. This is about the change management.
Exactly. So I mean, you said a very small but important word, Vesa. It's about why. I don't know why I should do this. So this is definitely a don't, not telling the why you should use Teams. So everything starts with the why. If I understand what's the why, then it's easier for me to grasp the use case, and actually it drives motivation for me to kind of learn.
Yeah, because I've got a customer, and their literal words were, yeah, but we just got SharePoint 6 years ago, so why should we now already go to another tool?
Hallelujah.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's
wow. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Do you still drive the same car as 6 years ago? No, of course not. I switch every 3 years. So why should you work?
We are in Finland. Hey, come on. 6 years, that's barely driving in.
Okay.
We have this, yeah, exactly. We have this cars here called Millionamersut. You know, they're like Mercedes.
1 million miles on it.
on it.
Nice. Nice.
Oh yeah.
They're
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah. Okay. We were hitting back to you, but that was kind of 6 years old car in Finland. It's almost as new.
No,
Yeah.
but still, I mean, they were like,
Yeah.
okay, but we've got SharePoint. Now after 6 years, we finally understand, we finally can work with it. And now you want to give us another tool? And
Yeah.
how do you respond to that kind of question?
Yeah, you that's going to take a while. When you start thinking about that, of course, it really you have to learn about the company first. If if I were to drop in any generic answer to that, it would most likely be a wrong one, because they don't get the reason why they do the change. They need that why in there. What's going to change? They need to understand the change in the world. They need to understand about security. They need to understand about what are their pain points. Are they seeing them, or they just doing a kind of extra steps? Can they be more productive? Are they paying more for the licensings or upkeeps? And how do they keep the services running? So it's a kind of a situation you're in, and that I hope I don't have to face that many times in that sense. Of course, it's interesting, but you just have to start digging up the reasons here, because it's not the kind of simple thing that you have a magic wand and hey, you do this and everything goes smoothly. It might be that they might blow Teams meetings. They can't do that in SharePoint.
For example, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and they may be paying for the Skype or something else, and they might get into that. But yeah, there are interesting scenarios. I had one customer way many years, more years back, and I think it was 2011 or something like that, and 12, 13, something. Anyway, they had SharePoint 2003. and it had fallen out from the support ring. Of course, Microsoft wasn't supporting it anymore. There were no updates. There were no security updates. So it's a kind of a touchy situation. And when I was trying to talk about them, that they could benefit from the upgrade to the later version, that could have lots of more fancy stuff in there, and just like your situation. In that sense, that's why I remembered it. Is that they didn't feel it was a security issue because it was inside their firewall. It was not connected to the internet. So and it didn't go forward.
Yeah.
It was a thing that it works. They don't want to touch it, and no, it's not going to crash.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to fail, and it's secure because it's not connected to the internet, for example, something like that. So
yeah, I had exactly the same response this morning from a customer. I don't want to go to SharePoint Online. What if my hackers steal all my data? Yeah, but to be honest, your current infrastructure is not very safe. So I think it's better if you put it there. It will be much safer than on your on-prem right now. Well.
You can secure the data. But this is about the why for the IT or the why for the business decision makers. Because we are trying to talk about user adoption, but we are talking about IT. Surprise, surprise. But the thing is that, of course, before you get into that adoption part, they have to understand why they have to start using Teams, for example, how they could benefit from that.
Yeah.
And that's why they need to understand the risks they have. So, and that's the talk you may have to have with an IT. But you are doing way better if you can go for the basically business owners. You go for the higher on the top management, if possible. Because if they start understanding the risks they have, then to talk with the IT is way more easier. Because that's when you get the blockers open. And overall, when you're talking about the this adoption part, one of the, I guess, the don'ts the common situations is that you don't have a kind of management support for the change. Some department or sub-department, they want the team's training, they want that team's adoption, and they are really talking about between themselves about it. They don't have anything kind of support to do anything broader or anything company-wide. And there are many cases where it can fail. It doesn't necessarily fail. I've been training some smaller departments as well, because basically the situation may be that they have the teams available. They've been told to use Teams, but they are not necessarily getting any training because, hey, it's just like Facebook, you can use it.
Yeah.
and it's easy to use. You don't need any training, or if you want some training, go ahead and buy it, but you don't really come from the big picture. And the worst case of that, it can work, because in these cases they had they were a very strict group, and or kind of a group they were starting to find how they can work with them kind of as a team in there, and how they can go on from that old way of working, like they had their files in their hard drives or in their private caches wherever, and start towards moving a teamwork. So it was a kind of small steps. You need to do those sometimes, but then there are different kinds of hype that's around Teams. That, hey, let's get Teams into use, and yes, we can all use Teams. Go ahead and you start using that. After 6 months or 3 months or 1 month or 1 year, depending on the company and size and the momentum, is that how we are not. Why there's so many teams around, and why we are doing it very different. We had 2-person teams, perhaps. That's what I hear a lot, or everything's private teams, of course. So you don't really find the information. So where people are using Teams in a different ways, some may be open, some may be private, but they don't have a shared practices. So they are not using Teams the way Teams should be used, and in that sense drive the momentum forward.
Yeah. So having said that, so we started a bit with the don'ts of Teams adoption, also common struggles. So this is a good hook to go to the next topic, which is kind of what would be the best practices for Teams adoption. So I have one example which actually was discussed with Microsoft in Switzerland. What they have done with one kind of large organization is that they rolled out first Teams only on the mobile phone, so that users were only, because we are kind of used with the mobile all the time, doing chatting there and stuff. So people were starting with the mobile application for a month and so on, and after a month they activated the desktop application, and kind of the adoption was really quickly with that, because the users were not so scared in trying out things with the mobile app than when they were doing that with the desktop application. It was a very interesting approach.
But really, I heard about that story as well, but I don't have any customers that are doing so much mobile stuff.
Yeah.
To be honest, maybe it's because I've got old customers, maybe, but I don't know. But
how about you, Vesa? I mean, in Finland, everyone is with the freaking mobile phone, right? I mean, it's like people are glued to that thing. So what would you think? Would an approach like this work in the Nordic countries better than maybe in Central Europe? Or what you would think about this approach? I mean, I haven't seen it really in practice to work, but this is what some dudes at Microsoft Switzerland explained, that, okay, it worked really well for this particular customer. And I was thinking, it makes somewhat sense, but I agree with that what Marijn said, that, okay, there are not many really on the mobile train.
It's a kind of mixed feelings for me. That's one. If you have a situation where you have a lots of WhatsApp groups, for example, going on, and you already have a lots of shadow IT going on, and you need to kind of get them into use Teams, and that may be the easy part in there, kind of introduce a new tool, and okay, this is going to replace these groups or these shadow IT tools. That's how I see it. But then usually when we are doing or I'm doing Teams consulting, it's very rare if it's mobile first.
Yeah.
If it may be it's when you go into the first line workers, then it's somewhat different.
Oh yeah,
but if you're talking about office workers, they have laptops in place, and people are used to work with the laptop. They don't necessarily have a separate work phone, and there may be some change resistance. Okay, I have to start installing a work application or work apps to my mobile. That's a kind of a thing that can affect there. But if there's of course lots of need, then people start using that. They want to start using that kinds of tools.
Yeah.
But if you're just using Teams with mobile only, and I'm talking about the office workers, you're going to miss a lot in the process, because kind of communication, writing the messages in channels, using the files, that you can't really use tabs that well as you can with the desktop
Absolutely.
app, for example.
Yeah.
But of course you can do video meetings, you can do lots of stuff, and it's very good kind of complementing the Teams usage. It really depends on the focus. But that kind of sounds to me, it's more like a chat or meetings kind of a calls based focus on that scenario. But so I would, that's an interesting scenario, and I will keep that in mind, that okay, you can do something like that if you want, but it's not the default way.
No. Yeah, I mean, you were saying about the why of Teams. Why should we use them? And we a little bit elaborate more on the best practices. So, in your experience, Marijn and Vesa, what would you think is the best way to transport the why to the users? Do you come like with use cases, or I mean, mostly it's like this when I talk to customers that okay, well, why do we want to use Teams? Mostly it's about optimizing and speeding up the internal communication, but most of it is also that it's easy to actually collaborate with partners and externals. Just invite them into a Teams team and then start sharing documents and chat and so on. This is what they actually are the most exciting about, what I have at least experienced so far.
It's one use case, and when I'm thinking about this, that there are many companies who have this email overload already.
Yeah.
So that's why when they are interested about Teams as well, because if they can reduce the number of email and they realize people are working in silos, they are not doing the right way of collaboration with documents, that they might have several copies of the document, so they are not really co-authoring them. They may be even using SharePoint sites or SharePoint there, but it's not necessarily used in the way we all know that you have to go there, get the link and put it in an email, where on the other hand they can just kind of grab the document and put it as an attachment and so on. So they want to change part of that. And the other part, of course, if they are Skype for Business users, it's fairly easy to start using Teams meetings. In many cases, not all, but in many cases, that especially if there are lots of mobile users, they are very happily moving to Teams, because Skype for Business Mobile hasn't been really the best mobile app.
It's not the best.
Yeah, it's not the best. It's very
almost
nice.
Almost, but no.
Yeah, it's close, but Teams is just a bit better, and so it's kind of those kind of scenarios are first that come in mind. People want to improve their teamwork, and they want to reduce the number of emails. That's a big thing, but also having meetings done easy and with better quality. And people are usually had 2 years, one and a half year ago, when Teams meetings were starting to come out really well, and you were able to join in via browser. So that's when people were really interested about Teams meetings.
Yeah, it works well.
Yeah, they work a lot better, and it's easy to join. So that kind of things are little things, but of course, when you are doing a lots of chatting and messaging somewhere, then using the channel messaging, hey, we can reach out to everyone. There's kind of a sense of new stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, if when you introduce them gifts, the next 10-15 minutes of the training is just done. You can have a coffee break and people start experimenting.
Yeah, people love them, including myself.
Oh yeah.
So,
I sometimes use an example that we can have a whole conversation with gifts. And
Yes, so you can do that on Twitter these days as well. It's just anyway.
Okay, let me find you.
I said that yesterday on Twitter. Like, when I'm scrolling through my tweets, I just get a headache of all the moving images and.
They are like those. They're like those self-made websites in the 90s.
Yes.
Those animated
with the marquees.
Construction worker doing this. Oh, I love them.
No, but I think you're definitely right, Vesa, and also what you said earlier. How to sell it to the audience really depends on the audience. So if you're meeting with team leaders, if you're meeting with management, if you're meeting with first line workers, if you're meeting with just information workers, you will stress other parts of teams that they can benefit from. So
usually that, because if I already know or assume, that's a good thing of course to do, assume that what they are doing or how they are doing the meetings, then that's the one of things where you can show how they get do things better. And if you are thinking about the management, I guess that it's important to remember that their assistants are organizing the meetings.
Yes.
So your goal is to aim at them as well. You when you are thinking about, you ask about the best practices. One of the best practices is to build the champions program. You had some episode about that. I'm still recovering from that, of course. So you are going to find out the key champions there, and try to get the assistants, for example, can be the management champions. So you train them, you show them more tips and tricks, but that's the thing, is that you start digging in. But before you can do that, of course, you have to have some. You have to have your foot inside. The company also already has to have made a kind of decision to move into teams. So in your case, Marijn, you can't really do that yet because they're still at the SharePoint level, and so you have to find out ways how to demo this stuff to the management, for example, to see that, okay, this is the benefit, this is the thing you can't miss out. And if you are still sticking to the SharePoint and you're still sticking to the, hey, let's text message someone when we are really urgent, then you may be dropping out of the business in some years.
Well, this brings us to the next point. How to
we have
deliver
points.
how to deliver.
We have an agenda. Oh.
Wow. So how to deliver the message, what we just discussed before. So we talked a little bit about best practices, but now concrete. So to give some tips to our viewers, the few of them. So when you talk about training or like delivering the message, so training versus self-help onboarding measures. So what's your take on that? I mean, I love giving teams trainings because everyone is so excited, but I also know that contact training or classroom training, I mean, they suck in the long run, because we even had an episode about this in Blaming Dangerous in the first season, because people, they just forget so quickly what they learn if they don't really, let's say, keep on training what they learned from the classroom training. Okay. It's waste of time. So
I'm going to stick to that. What you said, people forget what they are being trained at. Yeah. That's when you have the training done in the wrong time. You have somebody planning the training schedule, and it has nothing to do with the actual rollout schedule.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a gap between. They need to start using Teams the moment they come out of training. Basically, they need to have those use cases. I'm coming back hopefully for these use cases, because that's one way to explain how to use Teams, is that they come back and start using them, start changing their work. And that's not coming from individual kind of one person who is in the team. The whole team has to do that change, and their team leader or whoever is leading them must ask for that change. They need to start using that, because otherwise, they will forget. And it's is it a classroom training, or they just watch the boring video or something like that? So it's kind of a it doesn't really matter, but they will forget if they don't start using them immediately. And I'd like to talk about coaching. The best way I can kind of train people or coach people to use Teams is that if I can get a smaller group in there. Yeah. So if you do if you coach let's say the champions or their own trainers or somebody else, and you can go through their pain points. They need to have challenges in their current work. So that's why they are very excited about Teams. Hey, we can do these things very easily. We don't have to kind of go through these multiple steps. And you're kind of trying to coach them to go, okay, this is your case, this is what you have. It's even better when you have somebody's asking about, okay, I'm doing this, and you can provide the answer. So there's a kind of the need they have, so they are very motivated to learn a better way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can see that the force is strong with you.
Oh, yeah. Yes, so, sorry, awesome. I already have the fallout.
No, but I mean, this is exactly the point.
That's cool.
Yeah. That's exactly the point. I mean, aligning your rollout plan with the training plan. I mean, that's the point. What's the point of training and then the rollout is in a few months? No one will really remember.
No, and it has to be about the real work.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's not about the generic training I blamed about in the beginning of this episode a lot. It's just, it has to be relevant, because that's when they are listening.
So we should rename this episode and blaming the trainer.
And blame the training plan.
Exactly. Yeah. Blaming the training plan.
Blame the people from marketing and communications who came up with the training plan. So
we are those also.
Oh,
no. blame us.
Whoops. Blame us. Okay. Yeah.
My lightsaber was just spontaneously ignited. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Happens to everyone.
That happens sometimes, yeah. But
you're so young.
For that.
Exactly. Sometimes it ignites too early. Yeah.
Oh man.
Where were we? So okay.
No. One thing that I wanted to add to the story is indeed, but you also have multiple phases. So maybe what you want to do first is to give some kind of 10-minute introduction to everyone, like, hey, we're going to Teams, this is how it looks like, this is what you can do with it. And that could be like a video or a live webinar that you do where everyone can subscribe to in the company and they can watch it later if they want. And that's already a first glimpse of what Teams can do. And then in a second part of your training, you can actually do classroom trainings where you actually say, okay, now we're gonna really practically go through all the steps that you can do and have some scenarios. And when you come out of the training, you can actually start using it. So I think that's a really good, it's a really good idea.
Yeah, the first phase you are talking about, that's basically creating the hype or interest.
Yes.
It's about, if you have a company town hall meeting, you have some kind of a meeting where everybody's more or less present. That's when the management or somebody represented project could start telling about what's coming. Yeah, Christmas party is a good one if you do it in the early phase. But thing is that people want to know about the change that's coming. So you need to. That's there's this you have heard about ProSci anyway.
Yeah.
And so heard about the ADKAR model and stuff. So basically, that has very well said in the first. You had the awareness part. I really love that part because it's a kind of thing that this is what's going to happen. People need to know that it's about communication, and then you start bringing about some of the knowledge what's going to happen, how it's going to change things. And this is the intro video, for example. This is what you can do with Teams. You could start the kind of social media style marketing, in guerrilla marketing in your company. You punch up the jammer if somebody's using that, and or creating email communication. Jammer, yeah. But the thing is that people need to know, this is what it's going to make possible. This is what we are doing. So they are more interested. This kind of tool is coming, and already you can bring out the why we are doing this project, why this is important, what is going to replace, how this is going to change our culture, and kind of things that can kind of bring out people's motivation for that or interest. And of course the early preview programs, anything like that, come to the dark side, to the preview to the project team and bring people in. So that's kind of a thing that you can start creating a kind of a hype, and then you create a kind of start building the champions network already.
Yeah,
because you're going to need that when you are rolling it out. The training itself is not enough, as you said. People forget things, but when you have the champions here and there helping people out, and you have to have enough of those.
Absolutely. Yeah, very, very good points. So let's go to the last point of this Teams cast, and let's talk a little bit about Teams governance. Woohoo! So should we let them roam free, or should we give them rules?
I also like the fact that it is the last point. Like, we've been talking about everything. Oh yeah, governance. Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, just like in real life.
Exactly.
It's the life cycle that's coming still behind the governance as well.
Exactly.
But that's a good question, and if I answer in either way, it's an assuming that everybody is working in the same way. Every company is the same. You have to consider what's important. And the thing is that which one is it more important, to have a real strict control, or that people are not using the shadow IT? Yeah, if you have a really strict control, that can lead to the really dark side, which is the shadow stuff. And we don't want those Jedi people. They are not Jedis, but bad persons to jump out. Sith are jumping all over in there. But
they're more like stormtroopers. They're aiming at everything and missing everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, kind of. But thing is that if you have too much control, that can lead to that. And but on the other hand, in some companies you have to enforce certain things. But it comes to the point how easy it is to create a team.
Yeah, of course.
Eventually. And the more complicated the process is, the more difficult it's going to be. For some companies, that it works really well that they have a kind of a centralized, hey, I'm going to request the project or team space somewhere, and I'm going to adapt the fields, and it's get created for me. And the delay is short, it's going to be just fine. And in some companies, it may be that you just do a kind of a react what's happened there. You have a monitoring going on, so you get notifications about for some IT department part, for example, about the new teams. Because the thing is that people don't necessarily look up if is there already an existing team. But if you get the notification fast enough, you can have perhaps processes that, okay, there's something similar already. Could you just look that up? Or even better, you may have already an AI doing some part of that. but it's a kind of a thing that you don't leave it as a wild west unless you have a really good adoption program. If you are going through why we are creating teams, what are our rules or practices we are doing, you're going through the soft skills. It may be that you don't have to have a very governed creation process, but the governance is much more than that as well. It's just not about how we are provisioning new teams. It's about lots of other things. It's about the security stuff. It's about the compliance stuff. It's about whatever is out there. It's something that has to be planned. And yeah, it should be planned in the first phase of the project, not when it's already up and running. But I think perhaps a naming policy might be really important to some. I don't really like very long naming policies, and some people like to use prefixes, which is a kind of bad thing. But if you have to put metadata in the name, just put them at the end or somewhere else where they don't bother usually. But the thing is that there are lots of things in the governance in that sense. But the thing is that when it comes to teams and people are creating a new team, are they going through the new team creation, or do they have to go somewhere else? You could now do it very simple. You pin up a power up on the left rail and they can start requesting for a new team from there. And it goes through the governed way. But it's still not it's not the same place you looked at the Microsoft training or some webinar where you can create a team from there. Hey, I can't do that. That sucks. So it's not people are different. Or where are you going to create those groups anyway? You're going to create a new stream group or something else, and you are attaching the team for that or something. You never know how it's going to go forward. So as we, at least in the early days, it was not very easy to control every group creation, and so when you tried to patch one up, there were still other ways to create new groups, and IT couldn't do anything about that. So in those cases, yeah, but the thing is that that's adoption is important. People have to understand what they're doing. They have to understand why you are creating a team. Should you look up for the existing team? Is it easy? Is there a bot that might help you? Is there some other assistant that could help you find out there's a team, I'm creating this team, and you get a kind of notification. It seems that you just created or are creating a team. There are similar public teams that have some same keywords or something like that. Should you consider using one of these, for example, or kind of think about why they are creating a team? What's the goal? What's the purpose?
Exactly.
So it's not going to be
get started on the let's not get started on the private channels discussion here. It would explode our time already. So very, very good points, Vesa. Thank you a lot for your participation in our last official episode of the year. So we will have still one episode where we do a recap of season 2.
Awesome.
Our Christmas episode.
Our Christmas special, yes.
Yes, the Christmas special. Yes.
Our Christmas special coming up, and maybe some glance into the next year will come up in our last episode. But yeah, Vesa, thanks a lot for this very, very interesting discussion, and I hope
we didn't stick to the exact agenda, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's a very free format.
We never do that.
What is more important in the whole episode, we didn't once say fuck or shit or crap or all the other swearing words. So this one might be all good.
We said
yeah. Decentralized.
And ass.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks a lot, guys. I wish you a very, very great rest of the week. And we will see and hear us again soon.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Have fun.
Bye-bye, guys.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.